Alright, should be another live stream. That's right, 2 today. It should be showing up. There it is, finally. Anyway, just pop out the chat, do a few things, and then we'll move right along to the featured subjects. Whatever. Blah, 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 blah. And such. Alright, so that should do. Pretty much. Where the hell is it? I should be seeing that. I don't see it. The pop-out chat thing. Where the hell is it? Oh, there it is. Alright, so that's good enough. Alright, so move this over here, and yeah, that should be good enough. So we'll play a couple videos, read some comments, blah blah blah. Yeah, so I might as well do this first. Alright, so Ian Gosling has made a stupid, snarky, moronic video, so we'll play that. And deal with the kind of ignorant and stupid arguments made. Yeah. So the basic subject is, I guess I would argue that it's kind of disappointing that just physics doesn't really talk about the nature of friction. It talks about like it's some kind of force. And it's not really a force. It's a mechanical event. Things hit other things, and contact creates this opportunity for energy to be transferred, for something to lose its momentum and for something else to gain the momentum. So you could argue that the bowling pins, for example, you have a bunch of bowling pins and you're going to hit them with a bowling ball. The fact is you can just calculate what's going to take place. You can calculate each impact and you can figure out how much momentum the pin takes away, and it takes it away from the ball, and basically do the math. And I've already done that, and it sort of comes out to a curve you would expect. The line for the 8-pound ball starts off high and then goes down, and the line for the 16-pound ball starts off lower, and then declines less. So in one case, the 8-pound ball initially is giving away a lot more energy initially, and then it slows down to very little energy given per pin because it starts to lose velocity and it has very little mass. And the other case of the 16-pound ball, it starts off slow, but it doesn't lose much energy to each pin it hits because it doesn't give them as much velocity. Well, anyway, and it all works out in the end. The same amount of momentum is given to the pins. So the 8-pound ball doesn't show any evidence of having any more energy because it distributes exactly the same momentum it starts with, so it can't give away anything more in terms of pins and velocities. So it's only made up energy. The sense is they just say somehow the 8-pound ball has twice as much energy. It doesn't do twice as much anything. It's just some statement made, okay, that somehow it's twice. There's no evidence of it. But it's all about contact. It's all about this idea that when things hit each other, there's an effect. So, all right, so I've pointed out, maybe we'll do this first. Draw first, and then play the crap. All right, so I've pointed out that things like gyroscopes work. I don't even know if I have to draw it. All right, you have a gyroscope. You have a spinning flywheel. A heavy wheel, or it doesn't really matter, but it's spinning, it's rotating. And the idea is if it was just rotating and nothing was disturbing it, there was no, there's no bearing, no center, no nothing. You just rotate a disc in space, it doesn't mean anything. And so what makes a gyroscope meaningful is that there is contact with the, rod going through the center. All right, and that has a bearing, okay, that connects the rod you're holding it with, whatever the infrastructure is, the axle. In the case of some gyroscopes, there's an axle, and it's held on both sides. And the wheel spins, and so the only way the spinning thing can communicate with the outside world is through the bearing, okay? And so all you really have to look for is where is there friction in the bearing? Where's there contact? So if you have a bearing, you have the interior part here, and you could just say a ball bearing, so it doesn't really matter what the bearing material is made out of. The idea is if one part's spinning and there's contact to the left or contact to the right, the direction that the contact will create, that is the force given away, in the case of the thing spinning this way, okay, it's going to make contact with the bearing and tend to want to push it that way, right? Or it's going to push this way on this side, and this way, and this way. So if somebody wants to, for example, lift a 100-pound gyroscope from the ground with one arm, like Lithweight did, all he has to do is get the gyroscope to do the work. That is, he has to just push the bearing into the gyroscope in the direction he wants to go. So if he wants to go up, he hits it, to the right, and then it'll go up, and he can get it to take any pattern. But just basically is saying, make the bearing take the energy away. So it just takes some of the rotational energy out of the gyroscope and applies it to the shaft and causes the shaft to move in a direction because it's absorbing the energy. So anyway, this guy does an experiment with levers. Now, of course, they won't do the experiment I've suggested. You couldn't see my little bearing drawing. Wow, you're really missing out. Oh, what a tragedy. Yeah, I don't think so. Anyway, sorry about that. So I've talked about how levers work, and I've diagrammed them over and over and over again, and how it's just, there's no logical way to understand it any other way than how simple it is. It's just a transfer of the momentum. You're just changing a big M and a small v, for example, into a big V and a small m. You're just doing this equality. Okay, so you can have a lever, and if you put things in the right location, you can't change the fact that at one distance, the two mass is exactly the same weight as the one mass twice the distance. And it's just a fact. And you can almost see it. You can always have a fake one over here, just for example, and a fake one here, and always just doesn't understand that it doesn't matter which way I do this, right? If I have a two mass and a two mass, and I put energy in, the two mass is going to move a certain amount, and the one mass is going to be on the same lever, and this part of the lever is going to move exactly the same amount. So when this moves twice the velocity, this part of the lever has to move the same one that this one's moving. It has to move exactly the same distance. In any one position in the whole oscillation, the lever has to be in the same position, because it's doing exactly double the function, okay, in terms of twice the distance in the same amount of time at twice the radius. So this isn't even complicated. I mean, there is a formula, R, M, V. But regardless, you don't even need to know that to just know that, yes, it's already a standardized thing. This is something they already know. Okay, you can't change these facts. And so the simple argument is if I were to test a lever, okay, and again, I've done the test, but if I just sit there and try to figure out whether there's a two mass in this location or a one mass here, at any point I press here at the same location, they're going to feel like exactly the same weight, because they have exactly the same weight. The same weight on a string will cause them to move the same way. So if I take away the two and just leave the one mass will cause a certain motion. And if I have the two there, the same motion will happen here. I can't change this motion. How fast this moves, I can't change because it's the same weight. This has the same weight. So they keep saying there's something called inertia. So anyway, I did this experiment, like I said, with a 4-to-1 relationship. Okay, so if I had a 4 mass here, and I had a quarter mass out here, and yes, pushing on it feels the same. It feels the same when there's 4 here, or if there's a quarter mass here. So just 1 here or 4 here, all feels the same from my experiment. Anyway, but again, it's something you should theoretically know can't be any other way. It's no other way it can turn out. You're just stuck with the law that it weighs an amount, and it can't change how much it weighs. All right. So what's the, there's another important detail to get to. Yeah, no, I forget the important detail. It will come to me probably. Anyway, I'll erase that, and then I can think of what it is else that I wanted to draw. Yeah, that's all I'm thinking of at the moment. So, these are, oh yeah, inertia. I just wanted to say the word inertia. There's no such thing as inertia. Okay, nothing doesn't want to move. So, I mean, for us, it's a little complicated, right? Because you shoot a bullet at us, it goes right through us almost. Okay, so some things you can't, you can't push on it because it's too mushy. It's like a water blob in space. I could go into the space shuttle and have a water blob, and I could push on it or poke at it, but I can't get the energy to all the little bits because it's too flexible. The pieces move around too much. So, but the point is that basically all you're doing is just transferring momentum. So with a hard object, rigid object, all you're really doing is hitting with a force for a certain amount of time and giving your force to the object. There's no special function. It's the same as friction. Pushing something is the same as pushing the ground. It's all the same thing. You're just contacting something, and by contacting it, your motion is being transferred to it. The conflict between your two motions is being converted. And the trick is, if you want to be able to do a smooth transition between your speed and its speed, you have to accelerate it at the right speed, and that's what the lever does. So I should have kept that drawing for this reason. So what a lever does is allow you to understand that the two mass is going to move slower than the single mass of the same momentum. Right? So the one mass is going to move twice the velocity that the two mass is. But the great thing about the lever is it converts, so it ends up being exactly proportional. This one, for every notch this one moves 2 notches. So exactly the deceleration of this will match the acceleration of this perfectly. The deceleration will match the acceleration. And so it will duplicate the Newton's cradle, where you crash one thing into another thing and you cleanly transfer the energy completely from one object into the other object. Well, this allows the conversion because it basically makes them the same speed now. Because this one can travel its slower speed in terms of decelerating, and this one can travel the faster speed necessary for it to accelerate properly. And so that's what a lever does. That's why levers work as balances. Yeah. Okay, so these are all arguments I've made over and over and over. And so there's no inertia. Nothing resists being moved. You have to give something energy. If this isn't moving, okay, it has the standard movement of everything in this room, and I want it to move, I have to give it energy to move. I can't just sit there and say move. There's nothing magic about it. I have to create something else that's not staying still, and then I have to make the thing that's not staying still hit the thing that is staying still and transfer its momentum. And I have to transfer it based on what speed it needs to be accelerated at for all the parts to accelerate evenly. And that's what levers allow you to do. That's their primary function, you could argue. Alright. So... oh, a little comment of some kind. Let's see what it is. Hey, I love what you do, man. Great stuff. Thank you. Okay, well, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's okay. I guess it's okay. It's nice that people say a nice thing now and then, but again, I'm just obsessed with arguing. So you probably should phrase your greetings or your gestures of support in the form of a question or an accusation. I accuse you of being sometimes entertaining. What do you have to say about that? I don't know, something like that. Alright, anyway. So I got this speeded up.
There's a lot of complicated things in the image. But here, on this lever.
Hopefully you can hear it. The volume's a little dicey, so it might be too loud, might be too... I can't really tell. Let me see if I can tell in the settings over here.
We've got 1 mass weight.
Well, definitely not too loud, so I'll bring it up a little.
And the arm behind it on the same pivot fulcrum.
So he just has 2 sticks, one with the 1 mass out on the end, the other one with the half mass halfway down the stick. And then he has 2 springs that are supporting them.
A half mass weight, but twice the distance. These 2 springs here, 1 for each. Same springs, 2 valve springs. They've got the same potential energy when they're compressed, you know. So this is why they're...
So you don't exactly know that they're the same, obviously. So, but okay, fine. Close enough, fine.
They're equal. 1 mass half the distance, 2 mass twice the distance. I've tried to show that there's more inertia on this.
So there's no such thing, whatever this means. There's more inertia. So he's saying the lighter object, ironically, has more resistance to movement, which on its face doesn't make any sense. Why would the lighter object have more resistance to movement? So that doesn't make any sense. And what you'll find is that the lighter object, obviously, when he does this experiment, ends up with more energy. And so that's what you have to explain, why the lighter object has more energy.
Back one, even though it weighs less because it's only got half.
You keep saying it goes slower. It can't really go slower and have more energy. So not even that doesn't even make any sense.
The mass. It's got more inertia because it's twice the distance. Classical mechanics, you know.
No, there's nothing classical about that. So there's no rule. There's no, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no classical mechanics that tells you that a lighter mass further out on a lever has more inertia or whatever the fuck you're talking about. So you have to prove that that's some sort of classical mechanics because it's not in any mechanics book. It's not in any explanation of how skaters, for example, throw their arms out and slow down their rotation. There's no mv squared involved in any of that. It's a simple equation of just taking mass and giving it greater velocity, and to give it greater velocity, the rotational energy has to be used to create the greater velocity.
I was trying to show why it wouldn't accelerate as quickly.
I mean, if you have your hands in and they're moving around in the circle, they only have a velocity of, say, 10 miles an hour. I put them 3 or 4 times the distance out. Now they have to go 40 miles an hour. It's the same mass. I'm taking the same mass from this location, I'm putting it out here at this location. It's just momentum. It's just adding up the MV. There's an extra MV I have to create. Well, where does it come from? I can only create it out of my rotational energy, so I have to slow down because the only place to get the energy is out of the rotational momentum. No squared terms.
The same applied spring force. It's very difficult to do. When you compress them and let them go, it's a blur. You can't see it. It's too fast.
Well, use a video camera. Frankly, and again, I'm going to argue that pushing with the thumb of the palm of your hand is hardly doing a clinically correct experiment. So maybe I'll play the Brozo video where he basically concedes he's an idiot. So he wants to call himself an experimentalist, and he basically says something as stupid as, "I don't need no stinking quick release." It's just so stupid. It's always preferable to have a standardized releasing mechanism. Always preferable.
What I thought I'd do is drop one and then the other.
Yeah, so you thought you would do something stupid. Frankly, you'd probably tried a lot of different things. Now, of course, you won't do what I did, okay? You won't just create an oscillator and point out how somehow it doesn't oscillate regularly. Instead you're doing this crap, okay? And you can... It goes back to, so this is connected to what I was talking about with gyroscopes, because rotational motion in a gravitational field has a consequence. The gravity does push on one side more than the other side. The bearing does get pushed on. That's why people, if they hold a gyroscope and they end up spinning in a chair that creates another bearing, because the fact is that turning energy is going into the rod and then into your body.
You get an idea of how fast it wants to oscillate on the spring.
Not really oscillating. So you can see it barely bounces, okay? It hits, it barely goes back up, comes down 3 times, that's it. It's a shitty oscillator, runs out of energy really quickly. So it's clearly got a lot of losses in it. No doubt about it. Somewhere it's losing an awful lot of energy very quickly.
That's the 1 mass.
Alright, now that obviously has a huge, a much higher amplitude. So it must have landed with more force if it bounced back up much higher. So we know it must have had more gravitational potential, because the gravitational potential of lifting the 2 mass is the same as lifting the 1 mass half the distance. So that's not complicated.
Mass, much slower.
So it actually has to be going much faster because it bounced much higher, right? Can't bounce higher if it was going slower. Alright, so it has to be at the same location. If you put the 2 mass at that same location, or imagine the same weight, it obviously has to have more energy because it bounced back up higher. And now I will explain why it has more energy, I guess. So let's just play where he does the why. And, well, the answer is pretty simple. And it's a subject I've already talked about, friction. That you people won't pay any attention, but it really is. You really need to understand it. To understand all of the nuances of all of these mechanical systems, because the friction is the only place you can lose the energy. The air resistance is tiny. That's not killing you. So what's killing you is the friction. The contact is what absorbs the energy. Always. Always. Put that down there, then I can see it. Alright.
Half mass is much slower oscillation. The 1 mass, much quicker.
So it's obviously not quicker, it's much less oscillation. It only oscillates 3 times, it just bounces a little. So it's just doing this. Yes, when an oscillator starts to lose energy, it moves quicker because it's moving less distance. So that's all you're noticing. You're noticing the one with less energy doing that.
Very quick, isn't it?
No.
Same spring, both sides. Well, 2 separate springs, but...
Yeah, it only bounced up higher. That's the only difference. It has more energy. It's going to lose its energy slower. It bounces higher, and it bounces more times.
They are the same, equal springs. Much slower.
So it's not any slower. If he let it keep oscillating until it died, you'd see that in the last 3 bounces, they'll be the same bounces. It's just that it starts off with a lot more energy, so it's doing the much longer time because it's moving a further distance. It takes more time to move more distance. Completely unremarkable. Alright, so let's just do the part of why this is happening. He just repeats it over and over again. This is so bad. Alright. So the easy to understand friction problem that he's not accounting for. See, now he could do the experiment. We just lifted him up, this high. Alright, and so what's going to happen when something's lifted this high? Right? The only energy, he's lifting it and going to let it go. Okay? So the only energy is gravity. Alright, what's gravity doing? It's going down this way. Right? And the arc here is very small, right? So the distance is pretty much, this round part here, very little direction this way. But instead, he lifts it up here, right? So what's happening up here? Well, up here, there's very little this way, down. The thing can't fall down, right? It has to go this way. So it has a big amount of distance this way, very little distance down. This one has big distance down, very little distance sideways. So completely different environments. and he's got them rigidly nailed to the lever, so they have to follow the arc. The weight's not dangling, okay, like I did on my pendulum, for example. He doesn't have the weights dangling. When you dangle the weights, then they can just stay in the same position, and they're always going one way down, substantially. Alright, so that's part of the problem. But the real obvious part is when he goes way up here, what's he doing to this bearing? Okay, so let's say, let's just put the bearing here. I don't know if I even need this line anymore. Alright, he has his little hitter on this side. And then the springs are here. Okay, he pushes it all the way up here. So what's happening when it's up there? What is the force of gravity doing? Well, it's hitting the weight, and all the energy is going straight down this bar and hitting on this bearing, right? So what's the difference between when he has the one mass in this configuration and then he puts the two mass in the same arrangement, right? So let's do the two mass here. Alright, and so what's the difference? Well, you can understand that through the whole process of moving this way, this is twice the weight pushing down on the bearing. It's twice the friction, right? So we're back to the rolling things across the surface. I roll a light thing, less friction. I roll a heavy thing, more friction. I mean, if you don't understand that, then you really have a problem understanding anything about physics. The bigger the object is, the more I have to overcome friction. So if there was anything called inertia, it's ground friction, in the sense that that gives you the impression that the thing doesn't want to move, because the friction is making it stick. You have to push it out of the friction. Friction is essentially a dent created. The mass dents the surface, and you essentially have to push it out of the friction before you can start rolling it, start even moving it. And obviously, there's going to be more friction because this is going to weigh more. It's going to push into the surface harder because it weighs twice as much. So even though this one's further out on the lever, that's not going to change how much it weighs when it's in this vertical position, right? When you put it in a vertical position, it's just a water tower. Okay, it doesn't matter whether the water's here or the water's here. It doesn't matter where I put the weight if I'm going to just point it straight up on a stick with a weight on it. It doesn't matter whether I put the mass here or here or here. It doesn't matter where the mass is. It's the same weight pushing down. So the bearing is obviously feeling a lot more pressure with the twice as heavy object, and that's what's absorbing the big pile of energy. So the two mass is losing a ton of energy as it's falling, okay, because of the fact that it's got all this friction with the bearing, much more weight on the bearing. So the total energy is being diminished as it's falling, so that's why it barely bounces back up. Where this mass, it's still losing some energy, but it's losing a lot less than the twice as heavy thing is. So it loses less to friction, okay, less losses to friction. Alright, less friction here, more friction here. Alright. And that's the simple explanation for why they don't bounce the same, is because you've changed how much energy the system has, because this is certainly more weight going down on top of the bearing. The bearing can tell the difference. When the lever's in this position, the bearings can tell the difference. When the lever's in this position, that's when they can't tell the difference, because you have just as much energy pushing up on the bearing as you do pushing down on the other side. So it's just the rules of rotation. The faster you rotate a bearing, the more efficient it gets, because it's pushing evenly in all directions. And so essentially it stops hitting any surfaces because the bearing starts getting very efficient, especially oil-filled bearings, fluid-filled bearings. But at low speeds, they suck because it's just metal against metal. So it's just an obvious flaw in his reasoning, and he's just, again, so arrogant. Ugh. I mean, it's just obvious difference. Clearly not the experiment I talked about.
Mass.
It just does it over and over.
Half a mass. Slow. Why is that? Why?
So he keeps saying it's slow when obviously it can't be slower if it's rebounding higher. Just it's really not possible.
What is that, do you think? Is it something to do with different friction? No, of course not. There's no difference in the friction.
Okay, he says of course not. There's no difference in the friction, right? So what do you mean? The two mass on top of the stick clearly is a different amount of friction on the bearing. The bearing will feel the full weight of the two mass. And when it's vertical, all the bearing feels is the one mass. That's all you have. It's just one mass on the bearing. The other one has a two mass on the bearing. Clearly different. So you're saying that twice the weight on the bearing doesn't make any difference. I'm obviously counter-arguing. Of course it makes a difference.
And they're on the same pivot.
And it's the same friction force that allows gyroscopes. It gives you, look, you can pick up a hard drive, when it's spinning, and you can feel it, okay? You could do that with laptops. You used to have the old hard drives, and you could feel it in the laptop when you picked it up, because the hard drive was spinning inside. You can feel it tugging. And what's tugging? It's tugging through the bearing. There's no other way for you to feel the hard drive's motor except through the bearing.
It's inertia. There's greater inertia on this one.
There's no greater inertia. There's no resistance to movement. You have to give something energy for it to have energy. That's all you have to do is give them the energy. And obviously you have to give it to them in the right denominations. You have to give it to them at the right rate of acceleration. The constant rate of acceleration. You could argue that all material things need to be accelerated at a certain rate. That the rate is always the same for each object, but it just means that it's all proportionally the same. That is, one needs 2, 4, 6, 8. The other one needs 4, 8, 12, 16. They all need it to be in the same increments. And it has to be consistent with their total mass. The whole mass has to move. For the whole mass to move, there has to be an efficient transfer of the acceleration. The deceleration from one object has to, create a commensurate acceleration in the other object.
One with half mass, well known in classical mechanics, hundreds of years old. It's not quantum woo-woo.
Whatever. It's still woo. I mean, really, have you really thought about what the hell inertia is or what it could mean? How could the lighter object have more inertia? Whatever that is. Why would it? It's just momentum. You move something faster, that requires more energy.
What the world's built on, it's what our machines are built on.
So this just sounds like the woo of quantum mechanics. Somehow I have to believe you're woo to understand that the one mass object is moving twice the velocity. It's half the mass, and so that's the same momentum. That's not complicated. I don't need woo for that.
The inertia goes at the square of the acceleration. Because this one is further out, it's trying to accelerate faster. So because the inertia is...
So it has to accelerate faster, but it doesn't need to try. There's no try involved because it automatically will do that. Because this motion of this little dot, the halfway point has to move at exactly the same speed. When this moves 1 unit of distance, the other one moves 2 units of distance. And that's exactly what the lever's doing for free. It's doing a perfect conversion. It's allowing the two mass in this location to look exactly like the one mass at this outside location. The two look exactly alike to any weight on the other side. A weight on the other side will consider them both the same thing. It will fall at exactly the same rate. If I put a 9-pound weight on this other side, just let it fall with a string, the two levers, whether I put the one mass out here or I put the two mass here, both of them will move exactly the same. The speed of the lever itself will be exactly the same. Because it's the same weight. And weight is all there is. The universe runs on it. All your technology is based on it.
It's the square of the acceleration. It's much
All right, so there's no square of the acceleration. There's no formula for this. It's just bullshit.
more on this one. Much more inertia.
So there's no extra inertia, and again, just all he's doing is creating two circumstances that basically he's converting something where the torque on the bearing, okay, is in more than one direction into one where the torque, the friction on the bearing, is decidedly in one direction and completely based on the mass of the object you're putting above it. So the distinctions are obvious. The reason why the two-mass stick is moving slower is clearly illustratable. The losses of energy are easy to understand.
Much less on this one because it hasn't got to go so far.
Yeah, that means it has less energy and it's moving slower, not faster.
So much. And that's why Gary's wrong when he says...
Yeah, so I'm obviously not wrong. It takes more time to move the larger arc. So again, there's no real point in arguing it, but frankly, that's all there is. If you don't have to go the full distance, it doesn't take as much time to go up and down.
If you apply the same energy here, this one will shoot off faster, and we'll have a...
Yeah, we've already been over that. It won't shoot off faster, but yes, it's exactly twice the velocity. That's what the stick ensures, that it's twice the velocity, twice the distance. It's just twice. It's the distance times the momentum. That's all there is. There's no other equation. Distance times momentum. 1 unit of distance or 2 units of distance times the mass and velocity. It all adds up. That's the energy.
We'll break the conservation of energy.
Yeah, so there's no breaking of conservation of energy. Liar, liar, liar.
Because we've got kinetic energy, it's got double the energy because this one's going twice as fast as this one.
Right, it's going twice as fast, and there's no evidence it has anything called more kinetic energy. There's no evidence it does more work. There's no evidence that it has any other property than the fact that it's half the mass going twice as fast. It has the same momentum, identical momentums.
He says, same pressure, same force here.
Yeah, exactly, same pressure. So you're going to say they feel completely different, yet it's the same pressure. You don't see how that's just a gross contradiction. You can't say it's the same pressure and then say, but I can feel the difference. You can't do that and be rational.
It doesn't. This one goes much slower. Much slower.
So he keeps saying it's going much slower. There's no evidence it's going much slower. He didn't prove that or show that in any way.
So there's no breaking of conservation energy. Kinetic energy is correct. Mass times velocity.
I mean, what he should be doing is dropping both of them at the same time with a standard release and just see, whether the one with the heavier mass is actually the one moving much slower.
It's incorrect. He says you wouldn't tell the difference. If I press here, he says, and I couldn't see what...
So he just said it's the same force. And now he says he can feel the difference between the same force. So even though it's the same force, he can feel the difference.
That's what I'm pressing on. He says you couldn't tell the difference. You can. That's as fast as...
Alright, so I did it with a 4-to-1 relationship. So he's just doing a 2-to-1 with these washers. Alright, so that's all he can tell the difference. And he's doing it with a lever that's, frankly, there's not the rest of the lever is missing from this other side. So in some respects, he's measuring the weight of the lever. So it's sort of blurring, okay, the distinction. Where I had a much clearer distinction because the lever was balanced. So there wasn't any imbalance in the wood itself. No imbalanced wood was deceiving me.
I can oscillate with all the force I've got. If I do the same here, I can do it much quicker on this one mass.
It doesn't make any sense. I can do it much quicker. What does that mean? It doesn't make any sense in this conversation to say you can do it much quicker. What does that mean? You have to go a certain height. For the other one to travel twice the speed, this one has to travel 1/2 the speed. There's no options. How exactly could it be quicker and conserve momentum? You can't conserve the momentum and say one of them's quicker. It's not possible. It's not reasonable. It's not a rational physics statement.
It's quite easy to oscillate with my finger. The art of mass out there is much harder. You can feel it.
Yeah, well, he keeps saying it, right? Okay, I couldn't feel it. I certainly couldn't see it. So I didn't see the problem you're seeing. I didn't have the problem you're having. Felt all the same to me.
Anybody would feel it. You don't feel it pressure in static position. No, of course not.
Of course you do. I don't know what he's saying here. I don't know why he's saying you don't feel the pressure in the static position. That's like saying you don't feel the weight when you're holding something against gravity. Of course I feel the weight. I'm statically holding it against gravity. I feel the weight. What are you talking about? So even that doesn't make any sense. I mean, what he needs to do is maybe use a bigger differential in weight. Use a longer lever and use bigger weights, and then maybe, okay, that would be a better test because you would be able to tell. I mean, maybe it's not that easy to tell the difference between 2 batteries in my hand and 3 batteries in my hand. Let's see. 2 batteries versus 3 batteries. Oh, yeah, it's a little I couldn't, I could definitely, it's too close. I can't do that. So, you're making a distinction between whatever 10 ounces and 20 ounces. I mean, what are the differences in these weights?
You wouldn't be able to tell if you weren't moving it. If it was static. They would feel the same. But as soon as you try to accelerate them,
move. Okay, movement. It's just movement. It's just a velocity. Just understand, there's nothing special about acceleration. It's just changing a velocity. It's a velocity elementally. Elementally, it's just velocity. And you can have velocity that's changing, or you can have a velocity that's the same all the time. But there's no special concept of acceleration. There's just changing a velocity or keeping a velocity constant. There's no special thing called an acceleration.
the force required is much greater.
So he just said it's the same force, and now he's saying the force is much greater. Bullshit.
Half mass one, the force is much greater. I can feel it. Whereas here it's much lighter.
Yeah, whatever. That's fine. It's fine. I don't trust your results, okay? So go ahead and show me you're doing the blind test. So you have to find somebody, maybe pay somebody walking down the street or whatever you have to do, and do the test where the person doesn't know what the weight is ahead of time.
Give me a little finger there. I couldn't do that with the one mass one. Give me a little finger. So when he says you can't tell the difference, you can. And if he did it himself...
Okay, if you can, yes. And he said, if I do it myself, I did do it myself. So again, well, fuck you. I didn't notice, okay? I mean, I just do it. I put a 1 mass 4 times the distance. So a 4 mass at 1 distance and a 1 mass 4 times the distance. So I did it with a much dramatic weight difference. And there's no way, no, the 1 mass did not feel heavier in any way. It wasn't harder to lift or harder to move.
So that's a lie. Do the experiment yourself, and then you...
Yeah, I've done the experiment myself. So fuck you. It's a lie. Fuck you.
Not have to lie to anybody.
No, fuck you.
So there's less inertia there.
So he says there's less inertia there. So what do you see there? It doesn't barely bounce back, which means it clearly has less energy. It's pushing on the spring less because the spring pushes it back less. So clearly less energy. Clearly more energy, much higher amplitude. The higher amplitude means it takes more distance to lose its energy to gravity and then restart again. Obviously that takes more time, okay, when you have more energy to put in and take out.
Much lower.
So again, see how many more times it would be willing to oscillate. This back one was going to oscillate 6, 7 times, 8 times maybe, the other one 4 times. Clearly huge difference in the length of the oscillations, the magnitude of the oscillations, and how long it was going to oscillate. Clearly indicating that the back one retained a lot more energy than the one in the front. The 2 mass lost energy to friction. The 1 mass didn't lose as much energy to friction. Simple. All right, so the Brozosian nut pile did leave a comment on here, so I guess I could just read the beginning of it, which is just so typically Brozosian. I don't know why this is small. Let's see how that works. Oh, my mistake. Sorry, you didn't get to see any of that shit. Yeah, I forgot. You didn't miss anything. You just kept bouncing it back and forth, so you could hear him talking about it. That's all you needed to really hear. All right, so this is the wrong size, and yeah, just all these little crappy details. I really need to standardize how I do this. All right, that is such a great demonstration. So clearly it's stupid. So this is a whole subject. Friction and contact is a whole subject that you people just don't want to deal with. And it's just demonstrated by the fact that Stephen Bro is now defending not using standardized quality release systems. All right, it would be perfect for Bruce Yearney. So again, how so? When it's obviously not showing anything useful except how you can use more energy, how you can lose more energy to friction. That's about it. And I only wish he had thought of it. Of course, I had thought of it, he said. Of course, Gary will weasel his way out of it somehow. I mean, the somehow wasn't complicated. All right, his only talent is being able to dream up excuses. No, your only talent is to take experiments that seem really simple and find some way to fuck them up and complicate them. So instead of doing what I suggest, you do something else and then say it's the same experiment. And it's pretty fucking stupid and annoying. After excuse for denying reality, however we show it. So again, you did show it. You showed using a spring on a lever to launch pool table balls, cue balls, and billiard balls. And what happened? The half mass, and the 1/2 mass, twice as massive object. Okay, the twice as massive object moved at pretty much exactly half the speed of the half mass. You got 19 and 11 as numbers. So again, just explain how that's a defense of the kinetic energy theory. Go ahead. Give me your explanation of how that works. How that experiment proves kinetic energy valid when it's so close to being a perfect proof of momentum. So you're the one denying experiments, clearly. You deserve more subscribers, mate. Well, this is a waste of time. Your verbal description is excellent, too. So there was no description of anything. You just kept saying the same shit over and over and over and over and over. It's just too stupid. You seem to have a knack for saying just right. There was nothing, he didn't say anything. He didn't have any theory. He just said the word inertia. There's more inertia somehow. And ironically, the thing that had more inertia was the system that had more energy in it. It had a higher amplitude, a bigger bounce. So somehow the thing that was harder to move moved faster. And it's just a fact it had to have moved faster to have bounced higher. So make sense out of any of that crap. I mean, it's just too stupid. It's so backward. Everything he said was pretty much exactly back-assward. All right. Insult Gary back, which I concede was my mistake sometimes playing his game. Well, whatever. Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, I started it. Oh, yeah. Fuck you. All right. Simplicity of demonstration is probably the key. So again, it's just a pile of crap. It doesn't demonstrate anything. So he's comparing it to Life of Brian. He's just too silly. That only has validity for very fast-moving projectiles. Okay, this is where he denies needing a quick release. Okay. He likes to complicate things by demanding quick release mechanisms where they are not required. Yeah, right. Pretending for the benefit of his Life of Brian type for followers that we are incapable of moving our hands away fast enough not to affect the action of the lever. So he really just doesn't understand. So why did Professor Lewin use a blowtorch to burn a wire in his experiment. Why'd the Mythbuster guy use a wire and a pair of scissors? Why'd they bother with any of that crap? Oh, because it's scientific. That's why. Those are the scientific rules of a good experiment. You want to do a shitty experiment? Yeah, you do it your way. I'll push. He now even admits in his own video. Now he's got a video up where he admits he compressed the springs all the way. That is, he smashed the spring until it stops smashing. And he doesn't even understand how you never want to do that in an experiment. You don't want to do. You don't want to go by anywhere past its full compression, just like you don't want to go past its full expansion. Those are called mistakes, moron. Anyway, that only has validity for very fast-moving projectiles, etc. Everything is fast-moving, frankly. Okay, everything, like even bows and arrows, I pointed out, it's better, if you have a trigger on a crossbow. It's more efficient than using your fingers to release an arrow. All right. Which explains why I only achieved perfect. So again, it's a perfect 1.4 results. I mean, it's just a crap experiment done crappily. And he's going to claim he got you didn't get any perfect results with your cue ball. You mean your billiard balls, moron. In my third incarnation of his proposed, it's not my experiment. So no, I didn't propose anybody using their hands to push things against walls. Will settle matters once and for all experiment. Well, you just didn't do that. His quick release of elastic band method did pay dividends. So he's conceding that argument. So what's the point of conceding? I mean, you're either for it or against it, okay? I mean, to think that there's ever a time where you don't play it safe is stupid. And clearly, you're saying that the speed at which the spring releases is something you're confident your hands are fast enough not to fuck it up. I think that's a pretty bizarre statement on your part. Alright, landed exactly the same place 10 of 10 times, so... Yeah, well, the fact is you can steal the energy 10 times out of 10 times. Alright. So he keeps talking about my proposals, which are just lies. I mean, these experiments have nothing to do with what I described or what I have drawn on the board. So again, just bullshit. But he said 1.4 is impossible. So again, I can't remember. So I'm not even going to, I won't even watch the video he posted with this stupid repeat he put in it of these carts, because he has text on top of the fucking experiment. So this is how, he's an insane. He's saying, look at my evidence. I'm going to put text on top of it so you can't see it. It's already filmed horribly. Okay, and I'm going to make it a little bit worse by putting text right on top of it all. I mean, it's just too... It insults anything that has intelligence. Has to be insulted. Anyway, let's see. I can't remember what his excuse was that time. Only excuse he developed for denying the first two incarnations of that experiment where the best I managed was 1.29. So you're admitting you get all kinds of wacky numbers. You still haven't fixed the experiment where you got the answer of... where my prediction was 12, you got the answer of 14, and your prediction was 16. You still haven't explained how that was a great experiment, where you got right in between the two predictions. Indicating what? That both theories are wrong? I mean, too fucking stupid. Let's see, I'll just read a little more of this. Yet here we still are trying to get through to him. That it's no coincidence. So again, there's no coincidence because there's absolutely no evidence. Your experiments absolutely suck. They're pieces of steaming shit. So there's no coincidence that you're getting right results. You're getting plenty of wrong results. Oh, we keep getting these results. What? No. What result is in this video this guy just played? What result here proves 1/2 mv squared? Where? I didn't see it in the fucking video. I didn't see something moving, twice the velocity, 4 times the energy. I didn't see any such event. Okay. I mean, it was him and Parapsychological who invoked the can be a coincidence argument. Otherwise, it wouldn't employ an argument suggests coincidence doesn't actually exist. I don't even know what this is talking about. What the fuck are you talking about? Where have I brought up coincidence, you retard? But anyway, it's an especially weak argument when he makes it because he is referencing things like Mythbusters. Okay, so again, he's taking shots at the Mythbusters video that he really can't take shots at. Because it's certainly done better than any of Brozo's videos. And he still has no explanation. The clay is twice as hard to move somehow. By magical circumstances, the clay is twice as hard to move. Yeah. Where they make terrible errors. So again, go ahead. Let's hear it. You promised to make a video showing the errors and you never made it. So why don't you back up your video where you claimed it was 60 degrees off and you claimed you saw some other thing? Why don't you make this video? All right. If it can be constructed that they were attempting to demonstrate how much kinetic energy was present. Well, that's the beauty of the experiment. They weren't trying. That's when you do your best work, is when you're not trying, okay? You're not forcing. So they did an honest experiment to see how much energy a collision has, and they found out, well, yeah, it's just momentum. They never even used the term, though, I don't think. Well, of course they did, because then the guy had to make the other segment in the video where he crushed the tin can between his hands and said, look, see, it doesn't crush even. So he compared a tin can to clay. Now everybody knows a tin can has a mechanical structure, and that once you break the structure, once you start getting it to bend, it's really easy to crush. So once you get it started, it goes really easy, and then it stops, where you've gotten all the air out. So we know how a tin can works. It has nothing to do with clay, right? Clay has nothing in common with a tin can. Nothing. It was Paraplo who suggested all that nonsense off. Who started all that nonsense off. What nonsense? There's no nonsense. Okay. I won't blab on, Ion. Have a great day and treat yourself. You deserve it. So what does he deserve? He's saying I haven't done the obvious experiment where I had a lever and I pushed on it. Yeah, I did. Yeah, fuck you. Oh, too silly. All right, so we'll go to the other video. Let's see, no more comments. Yeah. I was, giving the Americans a chance this time, but yeah, guess not. Let's just see how many people are in the room, just for this, just out of curiosity. 3. Wow, that is really bad for 9 o'clock at night. So, yeah, maybe I'll stick with the 7 in the morning. Anyway, that's funny. Tragically funny, but funny nonetheless. All right. So he has another video, so I should just have to forward, I think, and get to it. Yeah, I believe that's it. All right, so he's just going to retract some of the stupid things he said and then double down on them again. So it's just, he's just going to contradict himself. And there's just no point in it. But he's going to do it anyway. All right, let me make sure I keep this one in the frame. All right. Guess I could go bigger so you could see more of it, but don't know if it's really worth it.
Just to be clear, when I'm applying a force here, and the lever is in static position, i.e. it's not moving, it is the same force required on this lever with the 1 mass 1 distance as it is on this lever with the half mass.
Right, so he's saying at any position it's exactly the same energy. So doesn't that mean that at all the positions it has to be the same energy? If it's the same energy at this position, then same energy at this position, same energy at this position, you don't know what an integral is? I mean, it seems kind of obvious. You're just overtly saying, well, at any position, it's exactly the same energy. So I guess the total energy has to be the same also. And I would argue, yes, of course.
To distance. It is the same force applied here in a static position.
All right, so he keeps saying a static position. The static position is just the gravitational weight. So, yeah. And what are you pushing against when you're pushing on it? You're pushing against the gravitational potential. You can't change the gravitational potential. Moving has to be exactly the same increase or decrease in the force. So now you're moving into the force, moving twice the speed and half the mass is going to be exactly half the pressure. That makes perfectly good sense.
It only changes when you start to move the lever. Now, Gary says, if we apply a force here, so we accelerate this lever up to a position, and then say the weight could fly off. Say the weight could fly off unimpeded. Now we have to agree that from a static position to its final velocity where the weight would fly off, that requires an acceleration.
So this is the experiment Brozo already did, okay? And his results were 19 and 11. Pretty close to 2 to 1. Okay, I could say from visually just looking at it, it seems clearly 2 to 1. It seems clear that the half mass was going twice as fast. Okay, no doubt about it.
Unless you, Gary, want to change the meaning of that word as well.
I don't have any use for it, okay? I'm just saying it's like your inertia word. It doesn't mean anything. Acceleration is just a change in velocity. It isn't something magical. It's just adding more speed. You add more force, you get more speed. Exactly what Newton said. It's exactly Newton's argument. Argument was, you want to go twice as fast, you just add twice the force. It's not complicated.
I assume that you're going to accept there is such a thing as acceleration.
Yeah, again, and what is an acceleration? You're just adding or subtracting force. Decelerating, accelerating. You're just giving something force, or you're just having the force subtracted from you. You're giving it to friction, then you're decelerating, right? You give it to some other object, then you watch the other object leave with your momentum, a hunk of your momentum. But there's nothing else. There's just mass and velocities. And all you can do is exchange, mass and velocity.
It would accelerate up to that position and the weight would fly off. And what you say is, it requires the same force to accelerate this lever, the force applied in the same position on both levers. It requires the same force to accelerate this lever to the same final velocity for both.
Well, obviously the final velocity for this one would be twice as much, but the velocity of the lever will be exactly the same. The lever will move exactly the same. This will move the one distance in the same amount of time that the other one moves twice the distance. That's what the lever does. It gives the half mass twice the velocity.
And if we accelerated them both to the final velocity and then the weights flew off, you're saying that kinetic energy says that the half mass... What?
I'm obviously saying kinetic energy says the half mass has twice as much energy, which is ludicrous.
It would have twice the energy because it would be going at twice the speed, because it's at twice the distance from the fulcrum. That's quite correct.
Right. So obviously that's the paradox of your theory. The same force creates two different momentums. Two different energies. So you use the same force, you admit it's the same force you're applying, and somehow you're saying that I can use the same force to make different momentums, different energies. Obviously Newton would say that's not possible. All you can do is create the same energy. There's no extra energy anywhere. But you're just making up a fake notion that because the other thing's going twice as fast, that somehow it has 4 times the energy. There's no evidence it has 4 times the energy. There's no evidence it can do 4 times the work. No evidence it can knock down 4 times the pins. No evidence it can do anything in the universe besides just move mass with a velocity. Besides do the simple thing where 1,000 atoms moving 1 mile an hour is exactly the same energy as 1 atom moving 1,000 miles an hour. Explain how that statement is incorrect. Do that for me. Show me. Okay, how 1 atom going 1,000 miles an hour has intrinsically, more energy than 1,000 atoms going 1 mile an hour. That in some way you would much rather be hit by okay, the 1,000 atoms going 1 mile an hour than the one atom going 1,000 miles an hour. You already know intrinsically somehow the 1,000 are going to move you less.
And then we would have more energy from this half mass due to kinetic energy theory.
Yeah, made up nonsense. It's the same exact momentum. And yes, anytime you change the mass, by your theory, you're changing the energy. So yes, the half mass will have the same momentum as the 2 mass here, the 1 mass, and it's going to be going twice as fast. The momentums will be identical. And by your theory, that means somehow, magically, the half mass has to have twice the energy. Even though I'll say you'll never show it doing twice the work.
That's quite right. But where you're wrong is you say it requires the same force to accelerate both levers.
You just said that.
Velocity, and it doesn't.
You just said that. I mean, you just said it, okay? So you're contradicting yourself, not just me. You just said it takes the same force.
It requires more force to get this one to the same velocity. To accelerate.
Then you're not conserving the momentum. Okay, so that's all I'll have to say to that. So, again, so when Professor Lewin says, nature can't finagle momentum, you're saying that nature can, that you don't have to conserve momentum. So just overtly say that, okay? Quit pussyfooting around. You're just saying it overtly. You need more force to give those 2 objects the same momentum. The same momentum means they move identically. Okay, I move the stick and the 2 mass will move exactly the same as the 1 mass. The sticks will move exactly the same, those 2 sticks. That's conservation of momentum. It means the 1 mass is moving twice the velocity of the 1 mass. The half mass is moving, twice the velocity of the full mass. So that's conservation of momentum. So just say you don't believe in conservation of momentum. Quit playing this game about different forces. And then I'll quote Newton and point out how you can't play that game because it's against, if you're just going to say Newton didn't know what he was talking about, fine. But say it. Don't pretend it. Say it. Have the balls to say you don't believe in conservation of momentum. Because if you're going to say it takes more force to move the one object, then you have to explain that it's somehow a different amount of momentum.
It to the same velocity requires more force. Why? Well, because inertia, it has greater inertia.
So there's no inertia. It doesn't have any greater inertia. It doesn't have any of that crap. That's all bullshit. Okay? The spinning skater proved there's no greater inertia. It doesn't take more. The skater doesn't have to inject any extra energy. Okay? The slowdown will be automatic and the speed up will be automatic again. You don't lose any energy. Okay? It's just a conversion. You convert the mass moving slow into mass moving fast, and then you convert it back into mass moving slow. And that changes how fast you rotate. No energy lost and no special energy gained. There's no extra energy.
And the inertia says that, the formula says that it goes at the square of the acceleration.
Well, show me that formula. Because the only one I know of is the radius, the distance, times the momentum. So show me your squared term, energy theory, rotational energy theory.
And to accelerate it to the same final velocity takes much more force on this lever. It's not the same force to accelerate.
You keep saying it. Okay, fine. I'm just saying if it's not the same force, then it's not the same momentum. So you lose. You lose in the sense you have to say something stupid like you don't believe in conservation of momentum. So go ahead and say it.
Rate them both to the same final velocity. And you say, well, if this was all covered, you couldn't feel which one requires more force. And I can assure you, you can. And you haven't tried it.
I have no confidence in your assurance. I really find I haven't tried it just as annoying as possible. So what I think you haven't tried this on a better lever than this, a longer lever where you can and a more dramatic weight difference, and then tell me that you can tell the difference. So I would argue that you have so little difference between these two levers that that's why you can't sit there and get the right answer, because you're just looking to make up an answer.
You've just asserted it over and over again.
Right.
Without experimenting with it.
And I didn't say it proves anything. I just said that's my observation. I made the challenge. Okay? I said I don't think anybody can create this circumstance. Okay? If they actually did this experiment and tested people, my prediction is people will not be able to tell the difference. That's my assertion. If I had the videotape of the experiment being done, I would show it. Okay? But I don't. But that's my prediction. My prediction is that if you really do the experiment, instead of you just telling me what you think, which doesn't mean shit to me, frankly, it's hardly the blind experiment Isa was suggesting. Fuck you. All right? Until you do better than that, I have no reason to believe your assertion. Trust me? No, I'm not going to trust you.
Thinking that it must be a fact. Well, that's not scientific. That's a corruption.
What you just did is not scientific. I say so is not scientific.
But if you were here, Gary, and this was all covered and you put a hand in there, you could tell. This one takes a lot more force.
You're lifting it higher, you fucking retard, and you're pushing on it harder. So again, what's the point, right? You don't have any stops here. You don't have any, and even a stop wouldn't help. I mean, you're going to push harder on it, okay? Then yes, you're going to be, thinking to yourself that one has more weight. But how come it is you always push harder on the one you want to be heavier? Yeah, well, that's not a coincidence.
To accelerate it, than this one does. Look how fast I can move it.
Yeah,
this one takes a lot.
Yeah.
It's incorrect what you're saying.
Yeah, no, it's incorrect what you just said. Because obviously the shorter distance you just proved, you moved this lever a much shorter distance. You just proved it. You just showed us that you gave it less velocity. And then you gave the other one more velocity because the lever moved at a higher arc. So you proved that you put more energy into the one than the other. So you just proved your own argument to be fallacious and crap. You just showed us how you're cheating. You're pushing harder on the one lever and then claiming it weighs more. Well, of course, you pushed harder on it.
And you haven't tested it. It's very bad, it's very wrong. It's untrue and it's a lie. There is no breaking the conservation of energy, because with the same force applied to both.
There's no conservation of energy in the context of kinetic energy and momentum. There is just conservation of the real energy, which is momentum. Momentum's the only energy. It's the only energy Galileo, Newton, and Descartes understood. This phantasmagorical fairy energy that you never have to show us doing any work. You don't have a single experiment showing the lighter object moving twice the fast doing more work. Lighting more light bulbs, breaking more holes in singularities, running over more cockroaches. You can't show it doing any more fucking work in the universe, and yet you're just going to keep telling me I have to believe in your Jesus. Fuck you and your Jesus.
They don't both move at the same velocity. This one would move slower than this one to account for it. Completely right and correct.
Okay, that can't be true again. Can't be true because that's not conservation of momentum then. Alright? It's not possible. Same force has to produce the same energy, the same momentum. You can't produce a different amount of momentum.
All mechanics has always been right and correct.
Yeah, fuck you. So again, I'm not the one, you're the one rejecting the classical mechanics. So that's just absolute bullshit. To defend a Leibnizian attack against good science because he thought it was too atheist. So the only reason why MV squared exists is because some nut thought it was too atheist to think of the world as being run by momentum exchanges. That doesn't require God to show up. That's Leibniz's panic. You don't need God if momentum works. And that's what you're defending, you stupid douche. Well, fuck you. So, great demonstrations and clarifications, Ian. There's no clarification. Did he explain where the energy goes? No. Did he explain the friction? No. Did he explain the nature of angular momentum? That is, the fact that it's just momentum. Circular momentum is still just momentum. It's not some kind of special momentum. It's just masses moving velocities. If the mass is close to the center, it moves slower. If it's further out, it moves faster. The end. Not complicated. It's just momentum. Okay, the angular part doesn't change anything. Alright. Enough of that. Alright, so there really aren't any commenters. So, oh, there's one. Bubble Puppy. Ew. Ew. Not a great name, I have to say. Anyway, what is he talking about? Angular momentum. I don't know. What, you want somebody to type you a transcript of the video so far? What happened so far? Yeah, somebody can type that in the 200-character limited chat. No, he's talking about a lever, but whatever. I'm, sorry you didn't see the video from the beginning, but, really, there's just no point in going all over it again just for you. No, that would be stupid. So I'll go on to another Tim remark. I think there was some other thing that I wanted to get to with friction, but I just can't think of it. So we'll do the drag thing, which is also sort of related to the friction subject because it's related to how energy perpetuates in the known universe and such. In the elemental universe, I guess you could argue. Alright, so I need to make this smaller again. It's always some kind of bullshit here. Still smaller than that, I guess. Alright, that's good enough. Alright, great video. It's in a video. I was pretty hard on the guy, so it's kind of nice of him to be that gracious, frankly, because I did call him an idiot more than once. Anyway, can you help me understand inertia in your model? Okay, so I keep saying there is no inertia. There is no inertia. Nothing resists movement. You have to give it motion, and it'll accept it if you give it to it in the right form. If you give it, look, if you give somebody in America, Mexican money or something, centavos or whatever, it's not of any value. They can't do anything with them, so they might just throw them back at you, and, that's all you're going to get. All right, but if you give it energy in the right form, the object will accept it and move, and there's no inertia. There's no loss of the energy. When the Newton's cradle happens, there's no inertia. So nobody could explain where there's any inertia, right? I mean, the ball comes down, it hits the other ball leaves with almost exactly the same velocity. Where's the inertia, right? There isn't any. It's a bullshit concept. There's no fucking resistance to movement. It moves perfectly well. Clearly, the only thing there is an obligation to deliver energy in the form the object can receive it. So as I pointed out, we're very bad at receiving the energy of bullets, right? The bullet goes inside of us and causes stuff to move in all kinds of different directions, so we don't gain any velocity, meaningful velocity from absorbing bullets, okay? But yes, if we were made out of Kevlar, well, then we can absorb the energy. And we can spread over more of our surface, and then we can cause it to give us a real velocity, because we won't be moving stuff in all kinds of wrong directions. I mean, fuck, not that complicated. Alright, if an object in motion is getting hit by more force bits from the direction of travel, what keeps the object at a constant velocity? So I've sort of made this point before, but it's really just about whatever happens first. So the first act is always the act that matters. So you can almost think of it as in rotation of a gear or anything else. You push in one direction, and all the other directions are just a cancellation of each other till you get to the end, and it just forwards the old motion. So there's different ways of illustrating that, and I've attempted to do that in the past. And it's complicated, so it's hard to put into very, very simple terms, but I'll do my best. So I did do one example where I just used a cart example. So you could just make a box, all right, and you're going to throw energy into the box. And the secret of the box is the energy just reflects inside of it. So you throw it in this direction, and what's going to happen? It sticks to it hits this surface, and the box moves in this direction. All right, and let's just say the rule is, okay, so we'll just change the box rule to ones that would do with the real universe. That's full of energy moving in all directions. So there's energy moving in all directions, up, down, sideways, all kinds of directions. And so the idea is I put one more piece of energy going this way in the universe than was going this way. Oh, that could be better. Yes, it could, Gary. All right. And so, all right, so I throw an extra piece of energy in going this way. Well, what happens? Okay, so now it sticks here. And it sticks until a piece of energy hits this way. Now, the odds are that piece of energy is going to hit sooner because I'm moving towards it, right? I'm moving towards the energy. The energy would have hit me when I was, like, say I was here. The front of the cart was here. That's when it would have hit me if I didn't move forward. So it's hitting me at a new location that's sooner than it would have. Now I'm also running away from energy. Subtly, I'm moving away from energy coming from the back end. So I'm not getting hit by anything going this way, because I'm moving away from the energy that way. So I'm getting hit by more energy this way than this way. Well, anyway, so this one hits, and what happens? Well, let's just say it's a perfect Newton's cradle kind of event. The piece of energy that's going into me hits and reflects, and the piece that was stuck now leaves and goes this way. So now it's going this way. So the cart now stops. So the cart was moving from here to here. The cart was moving forward into more force. Now, if it's encountering the force sooner than it would have. But that's all it can do is encounter it sooner than it would have. It still would have encountered it. It can't avoid it. It can only encounter it sooner. So that's all it did. But it did move this distance. So we can just write that distance down. It went that way. Now it's stopped, okay, because this has left the surface. It's not pushing forward anymore. And now this thing's traveling this way. And what's it going to do? It's going to hit this surface and stick, right? And so now it will go back this way, right? So it stopped the whole time it was moving this way. Now it's moving. Now it's going to move this way. And now, but it's moving into a force that it ran away from before. So there's a bunch of lag force that it hasn't hit, and it's moving into it. So there's more force over here because I've been running away from it, and I'm running into it now. So I'm going to hit it even faster. So I'm only going to go that much this way. So I'm only going to get that far going backwards because I'm going to run into the force I was running away from before sooner. So now I hit the piece of force going that way. I reflect, okay, that piece, and I reflect this one back this way. And the same thing happens again. Right? So now I'm stopped because now the force bit is free. And eventually it's going to hit the front and stick, right? And then I'm going to go into the force. So the whole point is this is what you do, right? You just keep doing this. You go a little bit, you go forward, then you go a little bit backwards, then you go a little forward. Oh, okay. What's missing here? Okay, sorry. You go forward when it first hits. Then you stop. Okay, so I'll use a straight line for a stop. Then you lose a little bit going backwards. Then you stop. Okay, then you go forward again. Okay, then you stop. Then you go a little bit backwards again. And then you stop. And then you go forward again. So you can see that the trend is this direction. That's one of the drag arguments. That overcomes the drag is the fact that you're escaping. Now, I can give you the more complex explanation, which has to do with a much more complex idea. Don't know if we can see it on this board. These colors don't work on this board. But the idea, oh yeah, you can barely see that. Yeah, barely. It's just irritating that if I clean it with a different substance, it works. If I clean it with the other stuff, it doesn't work. It's just irritating. All right. this might be enough of a color change, right? That's a color change, yeah. All right, so if I put an electron, a proton, okay, and an electron together, all right, in my theory, this object has a power, okay, that the regular electron proton configuration doesn't have, in the sense that all of the force, that's the electron force, okay, it doesn't matter whether we call it proton or electron, all the force that's the opposite color of this first object goes through and changes color. All right, and then this one, it goes through because it's not the same color, so it goes through and changes color to brown, and then the brown goes through this and changes color. So none of the force, any force that's the same as the electron force, is invisible now. Can't hit it. And none of the proton force can hit it either, because it can just hit this one. It can't get to this one back here ever. So this one's always going whatever's pushing on it. It never sees anything coming this way. So no energy this way can get to this object. So whatever energy's pushing on it can never be reflected, because nothing ever hits it going this way, because the one force is invisible and the other force has to hit this first. So you can sort of understand that this object ends up just always regaining the momentum, because it never sees an opposing force. So if I can make one of these devices, the theoretical argument is it has perpetual motion, because you can never get rid of anything stuck to it. You can never reflect the energy pushing this one. All right. But it's it requires a bit of context to fully understand the force bits and the matter bits and the two kinds of interactions I'm arguing for. What do I do with the cap? Oh, there it is on the end of that thing. All right. So I think that's enough of that. And maybe we'll just see if there's any comments to deal with, if anybody has anything to say, and call it an evening. Alright, just got home from work. Glad I didn't miss the stream. Yeah, well, overdose. You spend too much time watching my videos. Yeah, can't. They're all interesting questions. I mean, there's so much depth to physics that physicists have ignored and left off the table. I mean, just the very nature of how energy is transferred. Again, if somebody's going to say the 8-pound bowling ball going twice as fast has 4 times the energy, they ought to explain how I can see that happen. Where will the evidence of that be? Because all I'm going to see is momentum transferred. I'm just going to see the ball transfer its momentum to the pins. I'm not going to see anything more happen. And I'm just going to see the same total amount of mass moving after the ball hits the pins. So when the 16-pound ball at 8 miles an hour hits the pile of pins, and then I have the 8-pound ball at twice the speed hit the pile of pins, when I add up all the masses and velocities moving after the ball stopped moving, it's going to be the same amount. So how can one have twice as much energy if they moved exactly the same amount of mass? The same amount of atoms were moved by both of them, a total distance, velocity. So if you add up the distance and the masses, you'll end up with the same number. So how could one have more energy if you have the same number when you're done? The same number of atoms moved a distance. I mean, those are really interesting questions, and I'm just saying they just gloss over all that stuff. Pretend they don't have to explain what energy is. It doesn't have to have any physical properties. It doesn't have to have any consistent properties. Again, this was broken from the very beginning, in the sense that why would anybody say the two theories are compatible when every single time you change the masses, that is, you have a contact or friction or interaction between two masses that are uneven, every single time you're either going to lose energy or gain energy. And in their case, they're saying they're gaining or losing momentum. I mean, it's not possible. I mean, you can't conserve both. So if you conserve kinetic energy, you have to destroy momentum. And if you conserve momentum, obviously kinetic energy is a fantasy. Because every time I go from a heavy object to a light object, I'm just making free energy. Every time I use a lever to convert a heavy object into a lighter object going faster, I make free energy. I really don't want to do the Lesage thing, you know. I mean, it's a particle model, but I'm just saying it's clearly not completely well developed in the sense that it relies on the idea that this stuff is going different velocities, that it's creating all kinds of heat and all kinds of other arguments, you know, like almost like these forces could fracture. So unless you do Lesage in a very disciplined manner where you say the ultramundane forces are all exactly the same and that they can never be destroyed, they never stop moving, okay? So there's lots of rules you have to put into Lesage to get to what I'm arguing for, and especially all the charge crap. I mean, obviously I came up with the charge argument before I converted that into the gravity argument. So, you know, the essence of it is a charge argument. You know, it's the fact that the electrons and protons deal with the force in two opposite ways is the feature, you know, that's so fundamental to the movement of electrons and protons, and their movement is what's creating gravity. Okay, I mean, gravity is just a deficit in the amount of force excreted by the Earth. The Earth gets hit by a certain amount of force, and it reflects less than it got hit by. Alright, if so, how do gravitational orbits work? How would they be any different? Lesage gravity is the inverse square law. That's why Lesage gravity was actually very good. That's why they call it mock gravity now, is because it perfectly creates the inverse square law, which is what creates orbits. So it works perfectly. I've always wanted to learn about physics, but school kind of ruined it with the way they teach science. I think what ruins it is that it's so weighted on math that you know, it's conceptually vacant, and it's just formula and derivatives, and yeah, there's no fun in it, frankly. There's no fun. I mean, math is not some kind of fun thing, you know, especially when it's all catches. Like this math only works in elastic collisions. This formula only works in this. All these conditions you have to remember, and then which formula to apply under which conditions. I mean, it's so rickety, and you know, it's just like memorizing the capitals of cities or countries or whatever. Who wants to waste their time memorizing capitals? So in my opinion, that's a real turnoff. I don't want to memorize a bunch of bullshit. I want to understand. I can understand MGT, you know. I can understand conceptually why those letters exist. No, I don't really. I mean, set theory has got some value. I mean, there's some abstractions that aren't terrible, but matrix. I'm trying to think of if matrices have any real value. I mean, there's shortcuts. I mean, it's stuff that gets you to an answer that's pretty good, you know, without going the long way around. But yeah, I can't say I don't think I do like abstract math much at all. I don't even like some of the rules for negative numbers, you know. It's all kind of a dangerous game, the idea of a negative. I mean, the signs ought not to be assigned to the number. They ought to be assigned as a pointer, you know. like a pointing vector. They ought to be an abstraction that you just follow along and say, here's the sign. It's just an attachment, a separate attachment to the number. But the number is an intensity, and it's always positive. I mean, frankly, any numbers that go beyond the geometry probably aren't worth anything, right? The algebra. I mean, it's all really just about the proportionalities created by triangles and squares and circles, you know. So anything that's disconnected from geometric math or algebra is probably useless from my perspective. One of the things that really surprised me is when I saw that they were deriving the new equation for momentum out of, not for momentum, for what do they call it? Something energy. Anyway, by combining energy equals mv with energy equals 1/2 mv squared, and somehow smashing those two things together. I mean, that, and then doing the vector scalar nonsense, like somehow the energy of a train, its kinetic energy is a scalar, and somehow its momentum is a vector. And how can they be a different thing? I mean, that's like having current going the wrong way in a wire. How could it be going the opposite direction? That doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. You're not going to tell me the energy's a scalar in the train. It's clearly going in one specific direction, the energy. So, an hour and a half already. A little bit more even. So, we'll see if, yeah, gonna need more interaction, people. If you gotta, come on, you can do it. Gotta say something relevant, useful, challenging, meaningful. I'm tired and I'll just leave. Yeah. I had a class in school where students can be exempted from science courses. Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea, frankly. I mean, I took science courses, frankly, okay, to tell you the truth, mostly just because they were high credit, right? So where you got 5 credits for a regular class, you got 7 credits, or 7.5, for the science courses. So I took extra science, just because I wanted the extra credit so I could get the hell out of school as quickly as possible. I technically had enough credits to graduate in my, the end of my junior year, but they wouldn't let you because they forced you to do 4 years of PE. You had to have 4 years of physical education. So I reacted to that by not going. So I cut English and PE, and there was one other thing, and I just cut them through the whole senior year. I didn't go to any of those classes. And then they were not going to graduate me, so it was kind of funny. They were going to not graduate me and force me to go to summer school, and I basically just stood my ground and dared them to not graduate me. I said, go ahead, it'll only make your statistics look worse. You'll gain nothing from it. I'll gain nothing from it, but go ahead and do it. But I'm not going to summer school. Fuck you. I got enough credits to graduate, you shouldn't have forced me to show up this third year anyway. I mean, the fourth year. So leave me alone. And, they went for my, my push. I told them I was already accepted at LSU, right? So I was already accepted at a college. It was like, what do I need you for? They're not going to kick me out because you don't give me a diploma, They're not going to care. So, yes, they acquiesced. And the funny thing, too, was I didn't go to the graduation ceremony. So I picked up my diploma somewhere in the middle of the summer. And the principal happened to be there. And he shook my hand because I didn't go to the graduation because it was so bad. I mean, our class was full of, shitheads. And so they did a whole bunch of, mooning the audience and all kinds of bullshit, So it wasn't a very graceful graduation ceremony. So I guess he knew I wouldn't have helped any. I wouldn't have made it more graceful if I had been there. Because I was a bit of a, I was a little disruptive. I mean, it wasn't an act up kind of way, but I was kind of a little bit of a troublemaker. Well, I was, well, whatever. Won't even go into it. No point. These people just use it against me. There's Tim. Okay, let's see what he's got to say. In the example you gave this morning about shooting a gun in space, yes, does the ship feel any less force because the bullet is being accelerated by the gunpowder explosion? So again, the gun's being accelerated also. So all it comes down to is the simple argument. Do you think it matters to space whether it's 1,000 atoms moving 1 mile an hour or 1 atom moving 1,000 miles an hour? Does space think those two things can do different amounts of work? And the argument is no, space doesn't. Space says that's the same capacity to do work. I hate astronomy. I mean, they're just giving way too much personality to everything. I mean, it's the whole singularity black hole crap. They've just gotten obsessed with all this bullshit. The only thing that makes any sense is neutron stars, and they, the obvious thing that they now are basically saying they're extremely magnetic, which makes perfectly good sense because it's a bunch of dipoles. But anyway, there's so much bullshit in astronomy. I couldn't care less. There's so much woo in it. It's just balls of fire, flying around. And why is everything on fire? Well, it's because gravity creates intense pressure. That's why. It's just so obvious. It's moving the matter. And then every time it moves the matter, it creates more pressure, more gravity. The more the matter moves, the more pressure, the more pressure, the more the matter moves. Kind of obvious. I mean, the two things feed into each other, but they don't feed into each other creating singularities. I mean, that's abstract mush. The stuff takes up physical space, and there's a limit to how much space it can evacuate. So, to me, the neutron star is all there really is. A big neutron star is a black hole. But I'd argue if it keeps collecting crap, it's not going to stay a neutron star. its purity is going to be disrupted. But that's a whole nother kind of interesting subject, is how heat escapes. Is there any real insulation anywhere in the universe? Can you insulate anything from heat? All right, do you think NASA could be trusted? Oh, I don't even want to get into that kind of wacky crap. Yeah, I think that trusted to do what exactly? I mean, obviously, I don't trust their agenda. Okay, in the sense that they support a bunch of wooey bullshit, looking for life on Mars and shit. That's just pop bullshit. I mean, that's just so stupid. Why would you even give it a thought as a possibility? It's such a remotely silly thing to think is happening for so many reasons. Especially places like the moon. It's just nonsense. But they indulge that kind of bullshit. And they, waste all their time looking at rocks and hoping something pops out. Thanks for the thought. Explanation thorough about objects stay in motion. Why objects stay in motion? Yeah, it's not complete yet. Yeah. There's so many little things, little details to keep track of. But I mean, the real detail is, again, I tried to say it this morning, and I probably will fuck it up this time too. But the space is just space. There's only so much, and moving in space doesn't really change anything in terms of how much total energy is eventually going to hit you, right? I mean, all you can do is you run away from, like, say there were rabid rabbits chasing you. Okay, you run ahead of them, and you're staying ahead of them. And then you run into, birds that are slowing you down. Okay. The idea is the rabbits will catch up to you anyway. All you can do is temporarily change the balance of force. You can never permanently change the balance. So it's like that's the inevitable thing. So if there's one more piece of energy pushing you in one direction, until another piece shows up to push in the other direction, it's sort of inevitable that this one's going to keep reoccurring. You're never going to escape that first thing that hits you, because it imbalances the balance. So you're always stuck with the total imbalance over the entire space. Like the photons that they capture. Capturing photons is they're really just exchanging the energy. So you're just converting something at one frequency into another frequency, or it's just a pattern in the force. Dot dash dot dash dot. It's a pattern of distance between pieces of force, a photon, and so you're just pattern making and pattern breaking, but in a sense you never capture a photon. The electron emits a new photon. Like a photon hits an electron, it changes the motion of the electron, and when the electron's motion changes, obviously it's going to push the universe, just like my hand is pushing the light. It's going to push the universe in the new direction it moves, and that push is real energy reflecting off the electron. It's real extra energy being compressed in that direction, and so that creates the new photon in the new direction, or the new elements of a photon. A photon is something that lands on a surface with a pattern. The pattern can come from different locations. I can shoot the first bit of the Morse code, the dot, from over here, and I can shoot a dash from over here, and I can shoot another dot from over here. So I can actually make a photon out of composite pieces that came from different locations. Now, obviously, I can't create an image that way. So when you see an image, those aren't photons that were broken. But when you just collect a photon, in like a photo detector, a photo multiplier, a lot of those photons are just random photons being created by synthesizing a photon out of the pieces. And I would argue that's why the two-slit doesn't make images. A diffraction gradient makes images, but a two-slit experiment doesn't. because it's making photons from different locations. The energy for the photon isn't coming from the same place. It's coming from two different point sources. Namely the surfaces. So that was an interesting thing for me to realize, that there's photons that are creating image data because they're staying consistent through their flight, and then photons that don't create image data because they've been scattered. I'm just vaping nicotine. Sorry, I have to quit doing that. It's just kind of a, it's easier doing the talking thing, while I get my hits of nicotine. That's just, I'm more comfortable that way. But I know it's annoying. But, I'll work on that eventually. And try not to do that in these videos. But, frankly, I prefer it. Yeah. I would argue I can think better. But maybe that's just, I feel better, so I think I'm thinking better because I feel better. But whatever. Nasty addiction. But as an addict, I can't hate it. Can't hate on it. I would have liked, it's one of those things where you'd like to replay your life, with cigarettes, without cigarettes. It would be interesting to see how the destiny was changed. Because really, I smoked a lot of cigarettes. Burned a lot of holes in my clothes. Singed a lot of my hair. Really is this, well, whatever. Hard to explain to somebody who never smoked what it's like to be, nicotine enhanced. But who knows, whether it's an enhancement or not. It is a funny compulsion, though, I got to say. It's just, just keep saying, you want more. You need, more, a little bit more. One more hit. Yeah, well, the first one, I have to admit, wasn't too good. But the second one was almost charming, and the third one was just fantastic. So, it's funny. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the whole oral nicotine thing, but so I tried it, but I didn't care for it. It takes way too long to get to your brain and all that kind of crap, and just kind of upsets your stomach, and it's just, I didn't like it. Not my preference. I liked the patch, but they didn't make it. They didn't put enough nicotine in the damn patches. So I was wearing like 5 of them. So that was a waste of time. I don't think I ever spoke with Vehement besides to interview Vehement, but I don't share their philosophy, so It's not very interesting to me. It's not even the same subject, frankly. So to me, they're not even on the same subject. It's just something else to get addicted to, but at least it's not smoke, I guess. Yeah, I wouldn't bother chewing nicotine gum, but whatever. I wouldn't have bothered getting addicted except when you're a dumb kid. That's the only time to do it, is when you're stupid enough to do it. I mean, Piero picked up smoking in his 30s or something. I mean, it's just crazy. I don't know why somebody would try smoking in their 30s. It's just this. It just can't be. You got to be smart enough to know this doesn't really do anybody any good. Well, good for you and quitting. That's, yeah, some people can do it. I mean, I had a neighbor who was a pretty hard smoker, and he just quit, went cold turkey, and he didn't drop dead. And I was like, whoa, that's really brave. I mean, he still went to work and stuff. I was like, wow, shit. Just even thinking about a few hours without nicotine is like, oh no, I don't want to do that. I'm getting better though. I almost feel like I could almost quit. I kind of did say this last time I bought a gallon of nicotine, and I said, this is it, the last. I'm not gonna do this anymore once that's gone. But it's enough to last a year, so I got some time yet. The streaming thing, I pointed out, it had a lot of disadvantages in the past. The quality wasn't very good. The audio was grainy, the video sucked. So there was a lot of reasons not to bother. And then, the people would show up would just be spamming, and it was just so much crap that, what's the point? So far this hasn't been so bad. I mean, there aren't people posting outrageously stupid things. But yeah, there was just so much, vile crap that you're just like, well, is this what I want to spend my evening filtering crappy comments? And, no, I don't. Yeah, so that's the simple answer, I guess. I guess also my life has just changed. I don't have the same, I'm stuck in much more of a schedule. So I don't have the same kind of free time, so to speak. Anyway, it never occurred to me to care to try to understand the universe. That's interesting. I was always fairly damn curious, but I hated the answers. I just hated everything was just complicated, and as soon as they start talking about all these different particles, it's like, oh, fuck you. It just didn't seem like this is going to, it wasn't even worth trying to understand. But I thought I'd give it a try in 2020. It has felt like an addiction since, and not always a healthy one. Yeah, well, I have to say, that's what sort of happened to me. Once I found these, what I thought were gaping, first there was the two-slit experiment. First the argument was gravity, okay? Gravity is not a bent geodesic. It's obviously a something. Something is making gravity. It's just not some magical bent space, whatever the fuck that is. So that was one just aching for a better answer. And then the two-slit thing came up, and I found out they really believe that the photon splits in two and goes through both slits, and I'm like, oh, come on, how can you believe this shit? There has to be a better answer. And then this MV squared, I noticed this MV squared thing. I said, what? They believe it's twice the energy? What are you talking about? I didn't know they did that. I really didn't know that this dopey kinetic energy theory even existed. You know, that they were making this claim that, you know, the 8-pound bowling ball knocks down twice as many pins. You know, I mean, it's just too stupid. You know, and obviously it doesn't, right? I mean, even the physicists who say it does have twice the energy. They can't explain how it actually works, because it actually doesn't knock down more pins than a 16-pound ball. When you mechanically go through it, there's no way it can do that. It won't happen. You know. All you can do is conserve the momentum and make some claim that the pins have more energy, but it's just a claim. You won't see them do anything more. So anyway, but yeah, it really did become an addiction once I started getting a glimmer of a grasp onto some idea that might answer the question more simply. That part became addictive, to just get it better and make it better and make it better and make it better. Spirituality is more innate to humanity, it seems. Once thought of it as existence. What? Humanity, it seems, once taught of its existence. I don't know what that means. But clearly they're looking for fun answers to questions. You know, they're not doing the, you know, what's the truth thing. They're doing what's a fun answer. Well, we don't need to do Trump news, frankly, but he should have been indicted like when he was 15. You know, I mean, he's been a rule-breaking, you know, fucking psychotic, selfish perpetrator, you know, whatever you want to call it, an exploitinous pig, you know, since birth. It just shows the inequities in the system. People can get away with the crap he's gotten away with. But they're all so dirty. I mean, I still can't believe that, they've really got to do something. Somebody rational has to run for president, or we're really fucked. Because the crap in office now is just crap. Frankly, it's just, brain dead crap. Ugh. It is so ironic, really, when you just think about the two parties. They are outdoing each other to the idiocracy trough. I mean, they're just saying, we can be bigger idiots than you are. I mean, it's like a contest to who can say and do the stupidest fucking things and still get elected. It's bizarre. I mean, if somebody just marginally reasonable would run for president, I don't see how they couldn't win in a giant landslide. Okay. Do our ape genetics play a role of a dominant existence in ourselves, or are they just as significant? I don't know. You're really not typing great sentences. We're just not genetically controlled. That's why it takes 18 years. That's why we have to go to school. It's because we don't have any genetics that make us into almost anything. We're completely fudgeable. You can turn a human being into almost any kind of monster. I'd say we just don't have any. I mean, beyond the simple things of eating, and fucking, and some basic little desires, there really isn't anything organized, ahead of time. It just isn't. Any thoughts on Musk? Oh, no. Wozniak. I don't know what I'm supposed to say about him. I haven't heard that he's done anything silly, but signed the petition to pause development of AI. Oh, he's afraid of AI. I must laugh at such things. The artificial intelligence that doesn't know what a feeling is. I mean, what's the point, right? I mean, this thing is just programmed. It's a fucking butler. I remember they had a website called Ask, and then they called it Ask Jeeves. So, they changed the name to Ask Jeeves, and it was like just Ask Jeeves, a butler. That's all this AI is. It's a 30 years later, 20 years later, they're just reinventing, buzz talk. I don't know why people are at all interested, frankly. Well, what do you think makes humans different? Going to school. Okay, language. That's it. Humans can do language. Language is the power. Without that, there's no power. That's the only difference between us and the apes, is that we can't teach them enough words. Their brain can't hold the words. So it's like we can sort of teach them that music has notes, but they can never understand that the notes represent a note in space, a sound. So they can't quite make a language out of it. They can just understand that a certain sign means go take a poo, but they can't really figure out that it's a bigger subject, a bigger world, and you're trying to talk about all the things in it and give them words that identify all the things in it. And, they're close, but they can't do it because apes maturate too quickly. And so you can't teach them a language because they don't have enough, there's not enough time to teach them the language. They mature too quickly. And that's the difference between Homo sapien and Neanderthal, pretty much. Neanderthals, by the time a Neanderthal was 9 years old, he was already mature. I mean, it was already his full height and weight. And the humans were way behind. And the whole point is that slow maturation means we can develop a very good operating system, and the operating system is essentially language. That's the power. We have the genes for being able to learn. Well, again, animals can learn, okay? Rats can learn, lots of things can learn. It goes a little beyond. We can learn conceptually. We can categorize. We can do things that animals can't do. Animals are more like calculators, and we're more like computers. It's just a little bit different. Same basic hardware, it's just better arranged. Well, whatever. It comes down to genetics. Isn't really saying anything. It comes down to perhaps really tiny differences. It wasn't, our intelligence didn't evolve. There was just some point where we could go to high school and learn, and the day before that, we couldn't go to high school and learn. There wasn't some slow, gradual evolution of intelligence. It just didn't happen that way. I mean, it happened all in a very small number of humans, that acquired these little better organization of the brain space. And they took over because when they showed up in the big tribe, they were so much better equipped to control things. They were the medicine men. They were the controllers. And so they basically did, they figured out how to do most of the breeding, how to father the most kids and all that kind of stuff, and that's how they took over. But the evolution was in a tiny population of mutants. What would the United States look like if religion had, well, who cares really, Zach? These are not really pertinent questions, I don't think. Religion had always been considered not worthwhile. I don't think, was it change? I mean, ethics are ethics. Um, you know, I don't, there's the people who aren't religious, as I'm pointing out, are the scientists. And the scientists are a bunch of girly men, frankly. I mean, they're sissies, all caught up in a bunch of phantasmagorical, wishy-washy mush. They're writing movie scripts. They're not, they're not even writing them. They're just putting a bunch of preposterous nonsense in them, contradicting their own science. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, religion's bad, but it's only one way to make a brain go bad, And I would argue the bad is that people have no appreciation for getting things right. The truth matters, and people just don't give a fuck. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. If you're going to try to learn physics, you have to hear their theories. You have to know what conceptually they're talking about. But yeah, frankly, they're dead ends. I mean, photons aren't waving. Gravity isn't bent space. Magnetism isn't something the magnet is generating. It's just a reflection the magnet is producing. It's taking energy in from the universe and making it look different after it hits the magnet. I mean, all kinds of ideas that are really important, I think, to getting things right. Nothing innately produces energy. It just regurgitates energy. The energy of the sun is really coming from the gravity, the pressure being created inside of the sun. Are there any philosophers? Oh, fuck you, no. Sorry, I don't mean to say a fuck you to that, but I just mean, I'm sorry, I haven't, I've never read a great book, except for a fantasy book, a sci-fi book or something. I mean, it's all nobody says anything very directly, so I can't say I admire the statements made by most people. I mean, obviously some people say there's great lines, great quotes from writers, but I can't think of any philosophers who get to the point, and most of them are like Nietzsche and Kant. I'd say they're rubbish, just absolute garbage. Well, of course, the new bots are more advanced. I'm just saying they're not doing much more than that, right? I mean, it's really great that it can write a script for you. It's more literate than a Wikipedia page. It's better constructed grammar, and all that kind of crap. But the content is still mush. It doesn't understand any of the subjects. It just understands how to put words together. Well, it comes down to basic values. That's the trick, right? I mean, all there is to value is the sentient experience. And then you're just getting into some basic question about, well, what's the ideal environment for sentience? And it's some kind of minimal amount of desire and pain and sadness and torment, and maximize the hedonistic pleasures and all that kind of crap. And then you get to the more elemental question is, well, you don't need any of this crap at all if you don't create somebody who needs it. I mean, the needs are created by us. The universe doesn't need us to exist. It doesn't need us to fantasize. It doesn't need us to do anything. So it's all wasted suffering, frankly. You don't need convoluted, just basic values, right? You just have to realize there's nothing else to value here than some harmable. So just find something that can be harmed and protect it from harm, and that's all there is to do, is find ways to protect things from being harmed unnecessarily would be the key word. And obviously, again, the whole thing is unnecessary, so all of the harm is unnecessary. Our particle physics needs to understand momentum. Our particle physics need to understand momentum. That's not a very good sentence either. Well, like I said, NASA already understands it, right? So, I mean, but they pretend they don't. You know, they don't come out and just say what's obvious, that half the shit physics talks about doesn't work in space. You know, so, you know, they're all in some, you know, they're all agreed to talk the same putrid language full of mystical words like random, you know, and spontaneous. You know, they all accept using these silly words, and you know, that's part of the corruption. I mean, I really don't think people, you know, in the space business are really thinking, "Oh, I'm traveling through the bent geodesic." You know, I really don't think. I think they're perfectly aware of three-dimensional space. I think they're quite aware of moving distances at velocities and all that kind of stuff, and you know, all of this abstract horseshit, the multiverse and all that crap. I don't really think they're thinking, maybe I'll crash into the multiverse. No, I don't think so. Particle physics is just mathematics, really. It's so disconnected, because they're just saying that anything that moves at a different speed, they're going to identify that movement at a different speed as a particle, as some new thing. And so it's like they have, you know, the electron at 10 miles an hour is called an electron, right? The electron at 20 miles an hour is called the muon. The electron at 40 miles an hour is called some other, you know, it's just bullshit. Do you see any value in a universe with consensus creatures, conscious creatures who are able to appreciate it versus a lifeless universe? Yeah, no, I don't personally. But why would I? You know, frankly, no. I don't see any point in realizing we live in a cold, cruel universe. I don't know. Oh, good. I'm here just to point out it's cold and cruel. Okay, I'm done doing that. Let me go now. Yeah. I mean, the real question is it worth having a universe just so you can go fuck bitches? You know, that's the question that, you know, all the morons are going to say, yeah, damn right it is. So, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'm not saying there's no value to ChatGPT. I've already pointed out how, for programming code, it's really an enhancement. That, yeah, they should just develop it for that one purpose alone, of just optimizing people's code. You know, they ought to just create a bot specific to that function, frankly. But you know, asking it questions like, you know, what's the best, whatever, way to fry a jelly bean, what's the point? Yeah, I haven't tested it at all, but yeah, I'd love to. You know, I'd love to test some code just to see whether it's, you know, how efficient it is. I mean, part of me thinks, you know, efficient code is very abstract in the sense that all the variables are briefly named and everything is very, you know, very direct. You know, no, you know, no four-syllable functions. You know, none of that kind of crap. Function 17, function 18. You know, that kind of thing. Something really minimalistic. Okay, well, I'm glad you saw that I was streaming. Unfortunately, you just saw it a little late because, yeah, I'm not going to be here much longer. I don't predict. As you get older, you don't like sitting in a chair for 2 hours. Yeah, there's little things you notice. Yeah, body don't like it. But it would be interesting, like I said, to devote it to, like if they devoted these, like I said, it's this kind of weird that they made these very broad, chat GPT, when I would think they would have first made like storytelling, you just like in the sense of writing a movie script or something. You could take all of the scripts ever wrote and all the dialogues and then rate the movies based on popularity and all this other thing. You could put all that information into this, an algorithm and see what it comes up with as dialogue. It might come up with something very profound. Who knows? That's true. You can always just go back to the beginning. Yeah, that's what I would do. That's what I do. I don't usually watch chat rooms live, because I like speeding them up. That's a very nice enhancement, is when they figured out how to let you speed a video up. I find that saves me a great deal of time. So it's quite efficient, because even at twice the speed, it's a little, for some subjects, it's not too good. But for most of the time, you can go twice the speed and still tell what the person's saying. And, that's a real, 15 minutes versus a half hour. It's a huge advantage. I saw some of the AI-generated art, and I wasn't too impressed. I tried to use it, actually, and, it didn't come up with anything. It came up with pretty bad shit. Pretty ugly. But yeah, I've seen other people who have worked at it a little bit, and they work on the construction of what you're requesting, and you say it the right way, and they've gotten pretty good results. But the sad part is it is a kind of theft, and there's nothing you can do about that. Some of it really is stealing the core of somebody's art, and but that's been a problem for a long time. Let's see, if we assume on average it sucks to be a human, it sucks less now that it did 100 years ago. Yeah, that's sort of an opinion, frankly, because you had lower expectations 100 years ago. You could, we were, you almost, yeah, I mean, you live so much more hand to mouth, day to day, and I don't know how much you ever even did dream of the future in the past, just because it was so fleeting. It was so harsh in so many ways. You just say, I can't figure out even how the past, I don't know how they ever even got their wives. I mean, you're almost like you get married and say, well, we can never really have sex, regular sex, just because, shit, that's too dangerous. You'll end up dying. I mean, I don't even know how they lived, frankly, because there was death all over the place. And it was just so bleak. I mean, why the hell would you get how could you even think you would be alive a year from now? Because it was just so many ways you could not be, Yeah, you can be hopeful if you wish. I just think it's really not very logical. The dilemma is in the psychology. We're built to need. We're not built to be satisfied. We're built to continually need to feed. We're addicts. We need to be constantly challenged and constantly provoked to try harder and do better and blah, 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 blah. And that's just the way we're built. We get bored really easy. I mean, you could argue that, the ideal circumstance is playing video games all day. So, yeah, you can live a nice synthetic life. But I'm just saying, would you give a kid cancer for that? I wouldn't. I wouldn't risk somebody's harm. I wouldn't step on a frog, so I can put 100 people in virtual reality, living out silly fantasies. I'm not going to torture something for that. So, it's all, I'm a very hedonistic person, but I'm just saying I understand that, all my desires and ambitions and all that shit don't amount to anything. They're really not, they're trivial. Fucking the bitches. I mean, it's trivial. Yeah, the wasted part, there's just so many hours, there's so many, I was just thinking about just the investment of time and different things. So I was thinking about the plants for a second, how, here I am in the spring and you nurse your little plants and so you can see a few flowers, a month from now or 2 months from now. And it's just, it's just so silly. It's laughable. It's so fucking silly. And, so all this stuff, all the wasted part, just logistics of staying alive, and then on top of that, all these wasted hours on, silly, and I don't know what to call them, fetishes, just this idea of an accomplishment or, a job. And why do I have that job? Why do I want this job? And you're almost saying, why do I do this? But, I don't have a good answer. Because somehow my psychology thinks this is the way to do it, okay? My yard should have flowers in it. So I'm going to make flowers in the yard. And, this is what I waste my time doing. And somehow that's gratifying. Bizarre. At some point you just hope it will be obvious that life isn't something to play with. Yeah, well, like I said, it's cursed to people at different points in their life, but obviously I knew that one right from hatching. I was not going to be a kid maker. That was for sure. I mean, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing here. Why the hell would I force somebody else to be here? To explain it to me? Come on, it's too silly. Yes, well, people are people. They're not very smart. Anyway, I went to a hockey game. I went to a basketball game once. I went to one. I went to one hockey game too. That's right. I did go to one. Barely remember it. I was scared to death, frankly. I was just, because I heard the pucks sometimes go over the glass, and I was over the glass, and I was saying, what the hell? I'm going to get hit with a puck. I don't want to do that. Baseball I didn't mind because the foul balls would come down and you'd say, I might be able to catch one of those. But I actually had a seat in Yankee Stadium, the old Yankee Stadium, and it was right behind one of the cement pillars. So all I could see was like the catcher, and then I could see the outfielders, but I couldn't see the infield at all. So it was kind of funny. I went to a hockey game out of curiosity, and the amount of wasted food is pretty sad. Every seat had garbage on it. I remember the train ride into the city, so I remember there was a whole, structure of buildings that was on fire. There's all this, you don't realize how much how many people are living in shit until you actually look out the window and see all the shitty places people are living, right? I mean, there's tenements and, those row houses and filthy streets and all that, it's like so tacky. There's a picture that I remember some guy gave us, a picture of the Eiffel Tower, we went to France. And it was just so funny because you got this little pretty Eiffel Tower, and then all the buildings look like fucking slums. There's laundry on the roofs. It's all, just looks like shit. It looks like I wouldn't want to live there. You have to pay me real money to live in France because it looks like the filthiest, dirtiest, cruddiest, shittiest place on earth. Why the fuck would I go there? I mean, everything looks like it's just made out of mud. So that was my impression. It was just funny that the picture just screamed, "Do not move to France." But the south of France, very nice. Get out of the city, you're okay. But I guess the city is just it's like New York. It's shit. It's mostly shit. Yeah, the dirt and the filth. It's all, yeah. But yeah, I don't really get that whole... I don't get going to any event. I just don't see how there's any fun. To me, it's like surviving cancer. I mean, you survived going on the event, right? You survive the trip, you survive the bullshit you have to go through, blah, blah, blah. And, you're just grateful to get home. Just, I made it home again. To me, there's just nothing about any adventure that has any appeal at all. I've been tossing around the idea that maybe everyone has such a fear of death. Yeah. Because deep down we know how lucky we are to be able to experience. Well, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I'm afraid of being tortured. But, I'm not afraid of being dead. I mean, I know that can't hurt me. So, I'm unfinished. I have work to do. I haven't completed my paintings yet, and so from that perspective, I don't like the idea of being dead. But tomorrow. But otherwise, it's about dying. I don't want to be suffocating to death. I don't want to die in some miserably disgusting manner. It scares the fuck out of me, frankly. Thanks for bringing it up. I did notice you're kind of a, yeah, he's got an icon where he's holding a baby, I think, so it's like, oh, eek. Yeah, no way I'd ever be going there. Ugh. The horror. That's like, that's Freddy's nightmare from my perspective. That's like giving birth to a big giant tick leech. It will not enhance your voyage through the adventure of existence. It will just be a horrible, frightening experience to watch the poor thing maturate. Find its place in a crass and putridly stupid world. Is Tim going to be in many Poppins? Is Tim going to be in many Poppins? Mary Poppins. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's going to do the remake. Just go fly a kite and take your medicine, chick. I've been focusing on, I don't know. For earning this life we were imposed on, and I believe the work you have done has not only been consistent, but has been very important. Well, I certainly think I've done, something. I mean, I definitely think I've done a better job in, I think, some ways of making the argument coherent. I mean, I'm not talking in abstractions. Something grounded, I mean, so many philosophers just use so much rhetoric that you just, it loses all meaning. Well, whatever. It's hard to, it's hard to evaluate my own performance in any kind of honest way. I mean, there's times I feel good, and there's times I feel shit. You got to dribble faster, boy. I certainly have invested time in it. I've done an awful lot of thinking. My brain is very tired. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised when you try. Well, I don't think so. It's useful to bounce ideas off in many fields. I haven't seen anything written by it that in any way indicates to me that it's going to say anything I have any use for, but whatever, okay. I'm glad it's helped you fix your Java code, but I'm not. Like I said for that purpose it might be very useful. I don't do that much coding anymore, so frankly, and the stuff I do is everything I have existing already is so spaghettified I don't think it's even possible it could fix it. So I'd have to start over anyway, and I don't think I'll be doing that anytime soon. So whatever, go ahead, enjoy your chat GTP. I'm just saying, I personally don't think I will be doing much interacting. I mean, maybe I should just use it for its good grammar, and I should just use it to say what I want to say in a nice way, and see how well it does that. I'll have it write my term paper for me. But, beyond that. But I'm not terribly devoted to writing a paper, actually. I want to write a flow chart. That's what I really need to do. I need to make a flow chart. Conceptual flow chart. Oh, I just have to get to it. I started doing it like 3 years ago. You need to just get it all and organize so you can get to each subject and point out the key connections and make the whole thing really easy to see. Do you think we will experience World War III soon? World War? I don't think world wars are possible. I think a war like, everybody against Russia, maybe that's possible. I don't know. So if you're just saying, we experience a war where it's a realistic possibility they're going to start flinging nukes around? I mean, if we keep electing lunatics as leaders of countries, I suppose that's a realistic possibility, frankly. I mean, worldwide, I mean, the only thing people elect are crazy fucks. So that's a little scary. But I don't know. I don't see anybody seeing any real advantage. I mean, there's lots of ways we can sneak up on each other and cause all kind of damage to each other, but everybody is so interconnected now that I don't think anybody wants to damage anybody. The Chinese need us undamaged as consumers, and we need them as producers, and all this kind of crap. So I just don't. The interconnectedness seems kind of broad, and I don't think anybody can really go on their own. and again, they can't take on the whole world. I mean, no, you know, North Korea is kind of a loose cannon in a little way, but I don't think it really wants to get into a war with the entire world. You know, 'cause I think it knows it's going to lose decisively. So, you know, I don't. You know, but I'm sure there's some kind of bizarrely stupid scenario that could give people excuse to make a horrible mess. But I don't see anything imminent. Alright, well, it is getting late, so I think I best go. And such. Because the subject is not really physics anymore. But anyway, appreciate the interaction, I suppose. You know, it's probably a good thing. You know, and I'll try again next time, and such, so forth, and whatnot. Yeah. And so that'll be it. What do I have to do here? I have to just hit the stop button. I just have to choose which stop button to hit.